3, hit it!
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. And I was thinking recently about one of the first books I read that really brought me to a place of peace inside myself. It was a book I read when I was 19 or 20 years old for the first time. So as I was in the worst of my suicidal ideation and just beginning to see something about the self-created nature of the anxiety and depression I'd suffered from for the 7 years leading up to that point. And it was this book by Spencer Johnson, who's probably best known now for one of his last books, which was called Who Moved My Cheese? At that time, he was writing books like The 1 Minute Father, and he wrote some very famous business books with Ken Blanchard, the 1 Minute Manager series of books. And this one book, though, 1 Minute for Yourself, made such an impression on me that I used to carry it around with me. It was like a security blanket. And I would read it again and again and again. And so recently I came back across it and I thought, I should read this now. I wonder if any of it still would feel relevant to me. I wonder if I'll be able to see why it was so comforting to me. And I'll share what I saw so you can see for yourself what you see. And the essential message of the book, and it's written in a sort of a parable form, where the young man goes and meets the wise older person and blah, blah, blah. But he essentially goes to his uncle, who is the happiest person that he knows and the most successful person that he knows. And he wants to know the secrets of his happiness and success, particularly because his uncle did not always come across as happy and certainly was not always successful. And his uncle lays out what he learned in terms of 3 things that were essential practices: taking care of me, taking care of thee, and taking care of we. And the fundamental idea is that until we feel cared for in ourselves, until we are okay and know that we are okay, everything we do will be tinged with selfishness. It will be at least partly an attempt to either get to okay or to make up for the fact that we're not. So what seems like such a good idea to teach our kids, to not be selfish, to not put themselves first, to put others first, to care more for others than you do for yourself, sets up this unintended consequence that we always feel uncared for, and we always feel not enough, unless and except for those rare occasions where we find somebody who's putting us first enough so that we can put them first, and we have this weird codependency that starts to emerge, where I need you to care for me so I feel cared for enough to care for you. There's an old story by O. Henry, The Gift of the Magi, that I'll ruin for you if you haven't heard it, but I'm guessing many of you have. And it's the story of this young couple who love each other very much, and her prized possession, the thing that sort of matters most to her, is her beautiful hair. And his prized possession is his gold watch. And they're not a wealthy couple, but they really want to give each other presents at Christmas. And so he goes out and he sells his watch, and he buys these beautiful golden combs and that she can use for her hair. And she goes out and sells her hair, cuts it off and sells it so that she can afford to buy him a beautiful chain for his watch. That's what happens when we try to put the other person first. It rarely works out as expected. And it's a constant setup for disappointment. So what the book points to is that if you start by taking care of me, by taking 1 minute for yourself and asking, how could I take better care of myself right now? Over time, you find that okayness in yourself, and that it is actually natural from that okayness to care for others, because when we're taken care of, caring for others is natural. It's built into the system. It's just because we spend so much time trying to care, we lose sight of the fact that when we're okay, we do. Now, taking care of thee is encouraging the people around us to take care of themselves first, so that they can care for others. And then taking care of we is how that plays out across the planet. Now, I remember when I first learned this, and it really affected me, because for the first time, and I don't know that it was really to do with anything I did to care for myself, I think it was just the recognition that it was okay to take care of me, that I didn't have to wait for somebody else to do it. I shared that with people, and I remember one client in particular that I shared it with. And I was very excited about it, and he was very excited about it. And then he came back to me the next session and said, well, that was a disaster. And I said, what happened? And he said, well, I made a list of all the things that make me feel cared for, and I had my girlfriend make a list of all the things that made her feel cared for, and we gave each other our lists so that I could try and do all the things on her list for her, and she could try and do all the things on my list for me, and it was just a mess. And I laughed and I said, well, that was the exact opposite of the point. It's that when you start to see that it is not only okay, it is essential that you take care of yourself first if you really want to take care of others, then it stands everything on its head in a really helpful way. And you've probably heard the phrase on an airplane, in case of emergency, put your own mask on first before helping small children. And I certainly, there's a logic to that. That makes sense, right? We all kind of get that. Well, I was talking to a friend recently, and she was saying the first time she heard that on an airplane many, many years ago, she thought, well, that person's clearly not a parent, or they wouldn't think that. But she said the person making the announcement went on to say, in case of an emergency, put your own mask on first. Because if you go unconscious, you can't do much for your kids. And she said that hit her right in the face. She saw the truth of that. When we go unconscious, when we are caught up in all the thoughts about the fairness or unfairness of the world, where we have to suffer while we help others, and where we give so much but we get nothing in return, why we care so much but nobody cares for us, why we give and we give and we give and no one gives back. We're not of much use to anybody. But when we are full to overflowing, when we feel complete, enough, okay, when we're in touch with our fundamental well-being, our fundamental okayness, then caring for others is completely natural. It takes no effort whatsoever. And so one of my mentors, a woman named Mavis Karn, talks about it as a kind of an essential selfishness. That you've got to put your own state of mind at the top of the list. And when you do, only good flows from that, because it overflows onto everyone around you. We have a saying in our company, overflow, not effort. If anything we do starts to feel too much like hard work, it's because it's coming from lack. It's coming from something missing. It's coming from not enough. When we are at our best, when we are at our most impactful, it's because we're so full up of love and understanding and good feeling that it can't help but spill over everyone. And that is very attractive. That draws people to you. That's good business. But it's also what makes a difference on the planet. So, your homework, if you want homework, is just to play with over the next week or so, taking 1 minute for yourself as often as it occurs to you, and asking yourself, how could I care for myself right now? What could I do right now to feel more cared for in myself? And see where it takes you. And if you don't want to do that, then just play with the idea, let it bounce around inside you, that taking care of yourself will lead to naturally doing more good in the world. Have fun, learn heaps, happy exploring, and I'll talk with you soon.